Daniel Dunglass Hume was born on the 20th of March 1833 in Curry, Edinburgh, Scotland. Hume was a Scottish medium, where it is claimed that he was able to levitate, speak with the dead, and produce rapping and knocks in houses at will. Hume conducted hundreds of seances which were attended by many noted Victorians. Daniel had a brother called Adam, who unfortunately died at sea en route to Queensland when he was only 17. Well, Daniel later claimed that he saw a vision of his brother's death, which was confirmed 5 months later. At the age of 1, Daniel was adopted by his mother's childless sister, Mary Cook, and around 1840, Mary and her husband emigrated to the United States with Daniel. When Daniel was at school, he did not join in any games with the other boys and preferred to walk in the woods with a friend called Edwin. They liked to read the Bible to each other and would tell each other stories. They made a pact that if one or the other were to die, they would make contact after death. When Daniel and his aunt moved to Troy, New York, Daniel lost contact with Edwin until one night Daniel saw a brightly lit vision of Edwin standing at the foot of his bed, where his friend made 3 circles in the air before abruptly vanishing. At this point, Daniel felt that his friend was dead. A few days later, he received a letter that stated that Edwin had died of malignant dysentery 3 days before Daniel's vision. A few years later, Daniel Hume and his aunt returned to Greenville, Connecticut, and his mother Elizabeth, along with his other siblings, emigrated from Scotland to America and lived in Waterford, Connecticut, 90 kilometers from Greenville. Unfortunately, his mother died a short time later and appeared to him in a vision, saying 12 o'clock, which was the time she died. After his mother's death, Daniel turned to religion. The house they lived in was disturbed by rappings where one minister believed that Daniel was possessed by the devil, but Daniel believed was a gift from God. The knocking continued and a table started to move. Then the noises started to attract unwanted attention from the neighbours, and Daniel was asked to leave the house. In March 1851, when Daniel was 18, he held his first séance, which was reported in a local newspaper in Hartford, Connecticut, where a Mr. W.R. Hayden wrote that the table moved by itself and continued to move when he tried to stop it. After the story in the newspaper, Daniel became well known in New England, where he would travel around healing the sick and communicating with the dead. Although he never asked for money, Daniel lived a comfortable life on the proceedings of various gifts and donations. In 1852, Daniel Hume was given seances at the house of Rufus Elmer in Springfield, Massachusetts. Witnesses included Harvard professor David Wells and poet and editor of the New York Post, William Cullen Bryant. Afterwards, they were both convinced of Daniel's credibility and wrote in the Springfield Republican newspaper that they were not deceived in any way by what they'd witnessed. On one occasion, 5 large men sat on a table, but it still moved by itself. Other people witnessed a tremulous phosphorescent light gleam over the walls. Daniel Hume was later investigated by Professor Robert Hare and Judge John W. Edmonds, who were initially skeptical, but later agreed that it was not fraudulent. In August 1852 in South Manchester, Connecticut, Hume was in the house of Ward Cheney, silk manufacturer, where they witnessed him levitating, where he rose up to the ceiling, followed by loud rappings and knockings and table movements. They also heard the sound of a ship at sea and spirit lights. When Daniel visited London, he made friends with a man called William Cox, who was a believer in spiritualism and owned a large hotel in Jermyn Street, London. Cox let him stay at his hotel without payment. Also living at the hotel was social reformer Robert Owen, who introduced him to other influential people in London society. Daniel would also hold seances during the day, where objects that were some distance away were able to be moved. One admirer was famous English poet Elizabeth Barrett Browning, who was convinced that the phenomena she witnessed were genuine, but her equally famous husband Robert Browning was not convinced. Daniel's popularity grew, especially by his feats of levitation, where it is claimed that he could levitate up to 7 feet above the floor. Witness William Crooks wrote, "We all saw him rise from the ground slowly to a height of about 6 inches, remain there for about 10 seconds, and then slowly descend. Daniel Hume also travelled across Europe, where in Paris he performed a seance for Napoleon III and Queen Sophia of the Netherlands, who felt a hand touch a finger and then witnessed a large golden ball move by itself from one person to another. She then saw a handkerchief move by itself and then return to a tied in a knot. Writer Sir Arthur Conan Doyle supported Daniel Hume and was fascinated by his various forms of mediumship that included the ability to let spirits audibly speak, the ability to let spirits speak through the medium, the ability to see things that are out of view, and physical mediumship, where he is able to move objects at a distance, and the ability to levitate. A paranormal historian by the name of Frank Podmore witnessed him rise from the ground slowly to a height of about 6 inches and remain there for about 10 seconds before slowly descending. In 1867 at 5 Buckingham Gate, Kensington, Lord Adair witnessed Daniel levitate out of a 3rd-storey window of one room and back through the window of the adjoining room in front of 2 other witnesses, Captain Wynne and Lord Lindsay. They stated that Daniel Hume swung out of a window in a horizontal position. No one professes to have seen Daniel Hume carried from window to window. Between 1870 and 1873, chemist and physicist William Crookes conducted experiments to determine the validity of the phenomena produced by Daniel Hume, and in his final report in 1874 concluded that the phenomena produced were genuine. Hume was forced to retire due to ill health, as he had been fighting tuberculosis, which he had suffered for most of his life, where his powers started to fail. He died on the 21st of June 1886 at the age of 53 and was regarded as a grandfather of English spiritualism. His spiritual practices were not without its detractors, where in 1864 he was expelled from Rome because the authorities feared he was a sorcerer, and French and American clergy also opposed his practices. Hume wrote a book titled Incidents in My Life, where 11 editions were published between 1863 and 2019.